2, she doesn't need to think anymore. Lost in knitter's repetition. Knit 1, purl 2, while the television blares, she is lost in knitter's repetition, her private concerto. While the television blares, she hears jewel tones, her private concerto. Her lips move in the counting. She hears jewel tones with large glasses sliding down her nose. Her lips move in the counting as a sign of her concentration. With large glasses sliding down her nose, inaudibly whispering to herself. As a sign of her concentration, she holds back her world. Inaudibly whispering to herself, for if she let her excitement out, she holds back her world. She might disturb our TV show. If she let her excitement out in unraveling emotions in the family room, she might disturb our TV show, or we might disturb her. In unraveling emotions in the family room, sometimes instead of the sitcom, I watch her, but not to disturb her, her inner world that none of us enter. Sometimes, instead of the sitcom, I watch her knitting, her way to escape into her inner world that none of us enter, where beautiful things are born. Knitting, her way to escape, making socks instead of time, where beautiful things are born in a now empty nest. Making socks instead of time, the lines of worlds fade, and all that's left in a now empty nest are the lines of corrugated yarn in a spiral design. The lines of worlds fade, and all that's left is wrapped around needles, lips, and hearts. The lines of corrugated yarn in a spiral design, coming together in knots, wrapped around needles, lips, and hearts. A pair of hand-knit socks, coming together in knots. And she'll send them to you, a pair of hand-knit socks. In jewel tones, you send her a check and she'll send them to you for $25. Thank you. That's always a tough one for me to read. My mother passed about 5 years ago. And for me, that encompasses her entire being. She was quite a knitter. And I have enough of her knitting to fill a museum, which I hope I can do one day. I'm going to read that. So that's one of my oldest poems, but now I'm going to read one of my newest poems. This one I just wrote after the election. So it's called Poem for the Blue Sky on the Day After the Election. I pace on the shore of the riverbank under a rusted bridge. Each squeak of pebble crunching under my rubber boots drowns out the sounds of America's impending doom. And though I am out here, outside in fresh air and blue sky, in my mind, I am still doom scrolling and Trump is still president for what I can only hope is a meager few more moons. Our time is now. Mystery laughter in the sunshine. Our time is walking by overhead. Empty hollow footsteps ricochet from suspended metal. I watch above me the conversation of strangers crossing the bridge, and now my meditative silence is pierced by their chit-chat. People I know are young by the number of times I hear the word like escape their lips. We are so alike, all of us, waiting for the future to begin. All of us who have come from dark pasts. We are more alike than we care to admit, and so we slap stickers on our difference. Red, blue, for, against, boy, girl. when all we really are is curled like a shadow in the shape of human, spilling over sunny rocks on a riverbank, water bubbling, flowing steadily west. I'm going to do one from Cape Cod. My father-in-law lives on Cape Cod, so we get to go in the summers, although we don't really get to go anywhere now. So I'm going to read a poem written on Cape Cod, and maybe for those who've been to the beach can try to visualize. It's about a sunset on the beach. It's called Truro Sunset, or The Beginning of Love. When it drops below the water, that's only the beginning. Musical notes drop and drift, sifting through layers of glowing clouds, and the foam on the crest of the waves is even whiter than the corners of your eyes. Sky, blue, pink, but it's more than that, more than the last licks, the fire hat of the sky. There were 7 kings of Rome, your dad tells me. Here we sit, the 4 of us, watching night arrive, silent as the common man. I think I'm going to move over to poems from the book. So Birth of a Daughter, one of the poems that opens is Cradle the Mother. It's about pregnancy. Cradle the mother. Feel the heartbeat, inside heart beat. Feel the hand making its own music, inside the cradle, plates shifting, not forming mountains, but humans, a girl this time, a mother for herself. And I think I'll do one I haven't, well, I think I read this aloud before. This is very body centric. If anybody has ever had a fibroid or a tumor or something unwanted in their body, you might connect with this one. It's simply called Feel the Fibroid. Feel the fibroid, hard as plastic inside you. Wish for it to soften, to disappear. Why can't it do this when you've perfected the act? Does my disappearance create the void it fills? If I come back, will it go away? How is there room for both of us in this body? I have filled myself with baby. Must you, fibroid, occupy the same space? Was my uterus empty too long? My womb is not for rent. You're squatting and I'm an angry landlord. I'd like to evict you, change the locks, board up the doors, kick you out. I want the unfurling of my baby girl. It's she I want to cradle when I place my hands below my belly button. I want to love everything. The lone crow's cry out the window and the quiet growing human inside me. I want to love my body again. Watch me do this magic trick. Fibroid, you tough bastard, I'm through. I highly recommend that. If there's something that you don't like or don't want, try to write a letter to it. That was kind of like my love letter to the fibroid when I was pregnant, and it was like a battle of the fibroid and the growing baby in my uterus. Let's see, I'm going to do Birth of a Daughter, the title poem of the book. Birth of a Daughter. I birth myself anew as I birth you, daughter. I am me, plus and minus the cells expunged to create you, daughter. You arrive, doll-sized, bright-eyed, a sponge soaking up my milk. More cells I shed to make you, feed you, daughter. Am I the mushroom, the fleshy, spore-bearing, fruiting body of a fungus, or are you, or do we form one as a verb? Do we mushroom into this life together, daughter? I write this as you are away. We call it school, though it is June and you are 3. I work, I write, I sit outside, and I can't lie, it's delicious, this time away from you. It's precious, as are you. It has only taken me 42 years to realize I am precious too. So I have another poem about my mother. It's not very Freudian. Most everything I write is about my mother or being a mother. This is called Heart Healthy. My mother loved pistachios. She would sit at the kitchen table with a plastic bagful, crack them open dutifully one by one with her teeth so as not to ruin her long painted nails. Pile a hefty mound of empty shells on the glass tabletop. Brown papery skins would escape and skitter at 2 deep breaths from her every sigh. I should have known this is why my daughter now eats pistachios so fervidly and full of heart. My mother loved other foods too, matzo brie, the fried egg, onion powder, and matzo crumbled into a bowl of egg, whisked with a fork. I made this my own, but not her veal and chicken cutlets fried in Crisco, the sizzling sound of meat crackling in fake lard that pop like the popping crack of pistachios. More, nut, my daughter demands, her chubby finger pointing to the bag. The bag lined with the words, wonderful pistachios, heart healthy, scientific evidence, heart disease, reduce the risk. Risk, the possibility of loss or injury, peril. My mother, inhaling bags of pistachios, a box of devil's food cake, devil dogs, Entenmann's chocolate frosted donuts whose black lacquer cracked when you took a big, healthy bite. My mother, the dark bedroom. My mother, the bedridden muffles. Unfit words from her heart. Get out. Leave me alone. I wish you were never born. This early morning, my toddler watches me pry open the shell, snap the nut in half, making it fit for her to eat. Did you know that pistachios cause migraines, that most nuts do? My mother's migraines took her over, made her nuts. Each cracked nut, each box of Entenmann's, little loaded weapons upon her body. My mother was 69 when she died, of so many broken parts, but mostly her heart. Her name, Linda, was a song. My daughter, now 2, Saskia, is a mouthful. Pistachio, I say, placing each halved nut in front of her, eschewing a tiny death. I watch my daughter, or is it my mother, chew and chew. I have one more I'll read, and maybe I'll see about another because I have a few minutes left, but this one's a little more hopeful. This is the final poem in my chapbook, Birth of a Daughter. I think there's a lot of people, if you have kids, you've probably snuck into their bedroom when they're sleeping and just been in awe of them as they sleep because they're so beautiful. So this is called To My Daughter Sleeping Soundly in the Middle of the Night. You are the reason the world keeps turning, the reason people like me do anything at all. You are the reason we want no wars. You are the one perfect existence to an imperfect earth. One touch of your cheek makes angels cry. It's so strange that everybody's muted. But if there are any questions, I see some comments. Oh my God, Entenmann's. I actually have a whole box in my kitchen right now. I'm always a sucker when they do buy one, get one free at the store. Thank you for your comments. I used to write letters to never send to people, and now I'm going to try poems. Yeah, a lot of my poems sometimes start as letters.
Oh, I want to say something quickly.
Yeah.
Your work is so unpretentiously evocative. You know what I wrote that I've been here testifying like a Southern Baptist because these beautiful lines, you know, like in the Pantoum, that line about, wait, I have it here, her private concerto. See, I want to like put a metaphorical gun in your back and say, I'm stealing that line. Bless you. You know, that's all I'm gonna say. Plus Goddard.
Yes.
Tear in my third eye. All right, I'm shut up.
No, I love it. Thank you.
Does anybody else want to share sort of an initial reaction to Samantha's readings before we move on to Rose?
Thank you for listening. There's a lot there, I know. There's a lot to unpack.
No, I'd like to thank you. It was really terrific. I really enjoyed all of it. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad. I didn't know if everybody would appreciate the kind of my obsession is around motherhood, so that's what I write about. But it's pretty universal.
Oh, it is. Yeah. It kind of shapes everything.
Thank you.
And what I love about your work is the way that you like so simply and elegantly seem to give life to thoughts I never really knew that I had, you know, until I hear you speak them. And then I'm like, oh, wow. So that's, and I'm somebody that never really felt that I was good at poetry, good at understanding poetry, but you are definitely making me a poetry enthusiast because I just love hearing you read. I love your work. I love the purity of it. And just thank you for sharing with us.
Thank you.
James comments that his mom was a knitter and he loved watching her. And I would add to that, my grandmother would knit a pair of socks every 2 days. And I have an entire drawer full of grandma socks. And she's been dead for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years at this point, and they're just starting to get holes in them. And it's like this grieving process all over again to lose a pair of socks. Yeah. In jewel tones.
Yeah, I've had the same experience. So when my mother passed 5 years ago, me and my siblings, you know, we went to her house and we're cleaning things up, and we found the drawers of socks. Of course, we already had a lot of socks that she had knitted for us over the years, but we did find the drawer of socks, and I have a picture. We laid them all out. There were like 30 something pairs, and we were divvying them up. I want this color, I want that color. And I wore mine all the time religiously for years. And then after she passed, I had to put them away because each time I saw them wearing down or getting a hole, it was like the grieving process. And I thought, oh no, I can never have another new pair of socks from my mom, so I can't wear them anymore. And so it's another little death that I can't wear those socks from her. So I totally feel that.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
Since, is that how I pronounce that? Yes, Since says, I adore how you sneak in a word that jars us in a way that makes us pay even more attention to what's inside and outside in our worlds.
That's a good
And
one.
David says, good stuff, Sam. Obsessions are a very good starting place for poems.
Yeah, that's really good advice for any writer, not just poetry. But if you have an obsession, just write about that. It's fine if it seems like it's something odd. Currently, I have an obsession with the dryer lint trap. It sounds very strange, but I read an article about a year ago. A family's house burned down, and they lost their children, two infants, and it was because they said the dryer lint. And I don't think it was the trap. I think it was actual the ducts that vent out. It was trapped with so much lint that it caught fire from their dryer, and it's tragic. And so every time I change the dryer lint trap when I do the laundry, I'm obsessing about house fires. And so now I actually have a novel brewing about that, because I just can't stop thinking about that and how tragic. And you know, I do laundry almost every day because I have two kids and a puppy and all this, you know. So I'm doing laundry and I'm just obsessed with the dryer lint and house fires. And it seems like such an odd obsession, but it might turn into a book. So there you go. Write your obsessions, definitely. I want to thank everybody for listening, and I'm excited to hear Rose. I'm dropping a link in the chat box if anybody would like to purchase a copy of my chapbook. I'm putting the link for my local independent bookstore, Bear Pond Books. If you buy it through them, they will ship anywhere in the US, or if you're local, they can deliver it to you in Montpelier, or you can pick it up, and I will also sign the book for you at the store before you get it. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now we are moving on to Rose Solari. I'm super excited to hear Rose's work. She is the author of 3 full-length collections of poetry called The Last Girl, Orpheus in the Park, and Difficult Weather, and the one-act play Looking for Guenevere, and the novel A Secret Woman. She has lectured and taught writing workshops at many institutions, including the University of Maryland, College Park, St. John's College in Annapolis, Maryland, and the University of Oxford's Center for Creative Writing in Oxford, England. Her awards include the Randall Jarrell Poetry Prize, an Emma Award for Excellence in Journalism, and multiple grants. In 2010, she co-founded Alan Squire Publishing, which is a small press with big ideas. So welcome, Rose.
Hello. Did I unmute myself correctly?
Yes.
Great. Okay. Everybody can hear me. That's wonderful. Samantha, that was gorgeous. Thank you. What a wonderful reading. And even before I heard you, I knew I was going to start with a poem about my mom as well. So this should make a good segue, I think. This is a prose poem from my second book, Orpheus in the Park. And it's called My Mother's Piano. What it must have cost her to carry that thing from rented apartment to rented apartment to rented house to the house they bought with the help of my father's GI Bill to the house I grew up in. Souvenir of her parents' brief, mysterious period of prosperity, like my aunt's diamond ring, my mother's Wurlitzer baby grand. Big as a boat, glossy as patent leather shoes. A literal-minded child, I worried that it, like other babies I had seen, was going to grow and grow a lot, eventually squeezing us out of the living room so that we'd spend most of our time in the cold, damp basement or trapped in the narrow upstairs hall. If there's a God, I used to think, why is my mother so sad and mean? Why is her memory so bad that she remembers the B I got in geography, but not the long, long list of A's? But I was talking about the piano, how she would smile when she sat down to it, closing her eyes as if the music that rose from her hands had hands of its own that massaged her face. How her fingernails would click against the keys, a backbeat I thought was so impossibly adult. Like face powder or the bright red polish she'd said I wasn't ready for yet. 3 keys past an octave, she would boast, stretching her fingers out to show me the span of her hands, and I'd put my girl palm up against hers to measure the difference. Okay, I think sometimes, so she could have been a teacher, a singer, even an actress. Okay, I tell myself, she got a raw deal. She was still able, in the grace of the absence of words, to make something beautiful and good, her hands moving like light, like water over those keys. What came from her fingers then was a story, slow at first and a little dark, speaking of generations who never had enough, and then of their children, and then of the fantasies that those children's children had. A curving staircase to walk down slowly, like Grace Kelly in a wide skirt, good light, smooth men with real jobs, real money, who knew their way with a cigarette lighter. Day to day, my mother and I would be just two women who didn't know how not to hurt each other. But when she played, there was truce always. Her at her bench, me curled up on the rug beneath my mother's piano. Both of us caught in the knowledge of all she'd never be. So that's Mom. And I think you're right, Samantha. I remember when I was in grad school, I studied with the late, very great, very much missed Stanley Plumley. And I was writing almost exclusively about my parents at that point. And I said, I'm afraid that I'm just obsessed with my family history and I don't, maybe I should be writing about something else. And he said, every poet needs an obsession and you're lucky if you've got one. Some people look their whole lives for one. So that was, I think, a brilliant piece of advice. Here's a slightly more cheerful poem. Maybe some of the rest of you have had this experience. Orpheus in the Park, my second book, is a mixture of two strands of poems. One is elegies for people, things, ideas, identities that have been lost. And the other is based on a series of myths. I'm going to read another elegy now, and it's one that I think some folks might relate to. This is called Elegy for My 20s. It is a different kind of happiness from being loved, but I maintain that it is still happiness. The small euphoria that comes of being alone and accountable to no one. Sundays, especially. I'd lie in bed late, shaky from too much wine or something I shouldn't have done the night before. Then it was time to roam the neighborhood, high on coffee and ready for something to happen. Something usually did, even if only a sudden particular slant of light that washed the streets for a moment, pale rose, pale gold, or a blush and a grin from the teenage boy at the video counter, like I was something sweet he could almost taste. I'd buy myself chocolate, eat it slowly while the sun did its falling down dance between oaks and elms. Surrounded by stroller pushers, sometimes I thought I was the only single person in that town, and I loved it. Oh, I know, I was often lonely. I had nightmares and was afraid a lot of the time. In fact, I was terrified, but in memory, in my 20s, I am an Amazon of solitude, a goddess of standing firm on your own 2 feet. That girl is brave and hungry, a little fatigued maybe, but full of her own wild self. Her jeans fit well. Her hangovers fit well. She rocks, she glows. I never tire of looking back at that comic book heroine, watching her scale the slit glass sides of buildings labeled school, career, confidence, sex. I think she's a wonder. I can't wait to see what she'll do next. Ruben knew that girl. And I think David Durkin, who's here today, knew her too. My most recent book is called The Last Girl. Here it is. When I'm through reading, I'll drop a link in the in the messages as Samantha so wisely did. All of these books are available on the website for our press, Alan Squire Publishing, so you can buy direct from us, or you can go to IndieBound and find your nearest local bookstore. We're internationally distributed, so you can get our books anywhere. My father was the person who really made me a poet, and so I wanted to read a poem for him today. This is called Math and the Garden. It was very hard. My parents both died in 1992, 3 months apart, too young, and both of various kinds of cancer. And my father, as he was dying, because he was so deeply and beautifully religious, like he was the best kind of Catholic, you know, who really believed that, like, love one another like your brother, really, like that they meant that Jesus meant that. So my dad was a really extraordinary man, and very hard. I always felt kind of hard to live up to, but he always encouraged my poetry, always encouraged me in every way. And getting used to the world without him was very, very challenging. So this is a poem about that, and it's called Math and the Garden. It's all a matter of threes or fours, like when my father died and it was him and me and what he called God and what I called whatever it was that was next, only please, not yet. God won, which means that even if he doesn't exist, he does. And Dad does too, as river or beagle or 5-year-old prodigy writing his serious stanzas in Latin. Which means, I guess, that meaning is already here. But I'm losing track. What I wanted to say has something to do with the dogwood, its 4-petaled center white blossoming that I want every year to be more extravagant than it is. As if the garden could be compensation for some self-rising sap that thins the green seasonally less insistent under the bud, despite all that fertilizer and mulch. After the last light rain in somebody's yard, the stars disbelieving themselves, what I saw on his face in that light was judgment, and then some. Please, I'd ask him, tell me again. I'm listening now. Just a couple more, and then it's question time, I believe. This turned up on someone's blog the other day, and I was so flattered and surprised. A grad school acquaintance of mine was cleaning out and rearranging her beautiful library, and she wrote a blog post about this poem, which was one of those little beautiful, graceful surprises the universe gives you sometimes. So this one's called Somewhere Between 4 and 5 a.m. And it goes like this. Somewhere between 4 and 5 a.m., the soul gets restless, leaves the body. You wake to the kite string tug. No, all you can do is wait, filling the time with books, self-scrutiny, or scotch until that filament of self settles back in. Years ago, you had a chance for a different life. A door opened, but you were looking elsewhere, listening to someone's bad advice, and didn't hear the hinge creak, the voice whispering, "This way." Or perhaps you did, but thought your chances infinite, told yourself you'd come back. You could always come back. Those are the breaks, your mother would say if she heard you now, and she'd be right. But sometimes you see it, that unlived life. It passes quick in the corner of your eye. You glimpse yourself, what you might have been, a face that could be, but is not your own. She isn't angry. but she knows everything you have missed and is writing it down. If you're reading in Vermont, you got to give a shout out to Reuben Jackson, who, my dear friend, my honorary poetry big brother, who introduced me to Mara and Since and this whole wonderful world of Vermont poetry lovers. So Reuben and I were both in this wonderful magazine. It's called Fledgling Rag. It's edited by Lee Hinton and Lisa Munson. And I thought I'd end with, how are we doing on time, Mara? I've got time for one more, right?
Yeah, you have time for one more.
Okay, beautiful. All right, I thought I would read this poem. It's called Here. My mom was a great opera lover, so there are some allusions there's an allusion in this poem to that. I rattle off a list of names at one point, 3 names. Aida and Lucia are the heroines of the operas Aida and Lucia de Lammermoor by Verdi and Donizetti, respectively. And Giselle is the hero of the ballet Giselle, which is the ballet that made me fall in love with dance, which I studied for some years. So I think other than that, this one explains itself. Thank you all for listening, and here we go. Here. Hungry for solace that orphaned autumn, you drove to the ocean, but it too seemed sunk in grief. Hard rain stabbed the sand. The wild ponies shook their manes and sighed. Still, you didn't weigh down your pockets, walk into the ocean. You had one last beer in the cooler, a small bowl of hash in the car. The drive home was all grip and skid, every guardrail temptation, and thunder and orchestra guiding you out of this life like Aida, Lucia, Giselle. Crossing the bridge, you thought you might soar in your tiny tin can of a car out over the whole of the bay, relieved at last of the burden of this life. I wish I had been there beside you. I wish I had taken your hand and let you weep. I wish I'd thought of a story to tell you, not sappy, but promising, the sort you'd want to stick around for. Though maybe I did, because here we are. Here we are. Thank you.
Wow, Rose, amazing.
Oh, thank you, love. Thank you so much.
Oh my God. Yeah, I think we're all pretty blown away. And let's see, I don't know if Ruby's still here. Ruby?
I'm still here.
Oh, okay. Are you still doing reading the chat questions, or?
I've been reading the chat as it comes in, and I was just debating whether, I guess I will just go back through and read comments that people wrote, and then we can open it up to Q&A for both Rose and Samantha. So we started off during Rose's reading with a wonderful poem with irony of your mother's life and what it might have been. Love the sun's falling down dance, beautiful image.
Oh.
Full of her own wild self, yes. In retrospect, can't wait to see what she'll do next, takes on different meaning. Even if God doesn't exist, he does stop me dead. Love such beautiful imagery of the dogwood. Uh-oh, where'd I go? I'm listening now is everything.
Oh,
It passes quick in the corner of your eye. I liked your imagining your father's various afterlives, and one of them is a beagle. So I guess now are there any reactions that people want to share specifically with Rose? And then we can just organically blend that into general questions for both poets, or responses. Ruben, go
I
ahead.
do. Oh,
Oh, go ahead, Mark. I'll come after you.
well, this is the real Marichelle Vaught. I'm sorry, I don't have my screen on. I actually have a migraine going on right now, but I could not miss this. And I did not eat pistachios, Samantha, and I will not eat pistachios just in case. But what I do have to say is, as I'm listening, it is like music. And hearing Samantha's poems and Rose's poems, it sounded like music to me as I'm lying here with my eyes closed. And the visions that I was getting and the personal experience and memories it was evoking was just beautiful. So I am so grateful for the both of you for sharing your work and for doing this with us today.
Thanks, Marichelle. Ruben.
I want to apologize. I got out of part of a meeting, so I'm going to have to leave after this. But I want to thank you both for to tag on to what Marichelle said. The musicality. I think poets are musicians. If one chooses to exploit, what's that old movie, The Sound of Music, and you both do that so beautifully. I also was thinking about something Franz Kafka said. You know that he said, you know, we books that serve as an axe, AXE, for the frozen sea inside of us. And both of you do that. I made kind of a semi-humorous comment when Samantha was reading it. I mean, I was over here testifying like a Southern Baptist because it's what hits the soul. It's the genius you both have. And again, it's not, as my Aunt Bertha would say, whose birthday's today. See, y'all ain't stuck up or highfalutin. You know, you can. It's like here and here, but it comes out here. So I thank you both. The last thing I'll say briefly, this is more personal. There's so many people here today I love a great deal, and I'm so happy to see you. Boy, like I miss my Vermont family very much, and between the reading and everything, y'all owe me some damn Kleenex. Okay, so.
Oh, we love you, Ruben.
Bye bye, y'all. See you soon, I hope.
Damn.
Oh my God.
Damn.
I know. Oh, now we're all
I
crying.
wanted to mention from the perspective of the fake Marichelle Vaught, something that I realized partway through Rose's reading, but was true of both Rose and Samantha, is that you both made me really uncomfortable in moments, and that discomfort felt good to acknowledge as I was listening and hearing of like, oh, I'm so viscerally icky, and then it's gone by just the experience of acknowledging it. So thank you.
Wow. Thank you.
I'd love to connect to that and say that both of you I found.
What?
Okay, you can go ahead.
That both of you wrote about the things that we're not supposed to talk about, that we need to talk about, that we should always talk about to ourselves and with other people. And I think that's part of that discomfort feeling. And I love it.
Totally.
Yeah, that's kind of what I do, I think. And I forget who said something about I don't know if you said it was the third thing, like the emotions underneath, like it's all of these things that, yeah, you said that before, the emotions underneath. Yeah. And I think of metaphor and how it's that third thing, and poets kind of tap into that. It's important. It's really important. My whole chapbook is about things that nobody ever talks about, as far as the physicality of your body in pregnancy and breastfeeding and birth and mothering in general, and how, mothering is so great, but it's also such a loss. And then being a woman who's lost her mother, there's like this double loss. So this whole time having a daughter and being a daughter without a mother, all I felt was loss. And that's just
Mm.
something nobody ever talks about because motherhood is so great, right? Yeah, so I definitely like to do that in my poetry. And in a way, I write these poems so that it's therapeutic for me. You know, if I don't write about these things, then it goes
Mm.
somewhere dark and then I'm not in good places. Yeah. So
Right.
there's a lot to poetry and writing as therapy, as with all art forms, whether it's visual art or music art or word art. I think it's all
For
really
sure.
out in the open.
Well, and it helps you understand. I mean, my mom had a lot of emotional issues. She was brilliant. She's absolutely brilliant, and hugely gifted. But, you know, I never understood when I was young quite why she was so angry so often. And when you're a kid, you always think it's you, right? You think, well, if I were better, if I were smarter, if I were prettier, whatever, mom would be happier. Um, but writing poetry about her really helped me to see her immense frustration, you know, being the child of very poor immigrants, not being able to go to school, to college, being pulled out of college to support the boys. You know, as I got older, I realized more and more that her anger had nothing to do with us, really. It had to do with all the opportunities she'd been denied. And I kind of wish, you know, if she'd lived longer, I would have been able to say that to her. But unfortunately, I didn't really grasp it until after she died. But at least I did grasp it, and the poetry led me there.
Rose and Samantha, I want to say to both of you how much I enjoyed your reading. I enjoyed your poetry. I am particularly struck by the fact that both of you are willing to expose such a vulnerability at different points and different aspects of your vulnerability. I'm really touched by that. I love the imaginative play and the music in both poets' work. Thank you for a great afternoon.
I know it's funny how I think for a little while in here we haven't thought about COVID or Trump or anything. It's been like so wonderful to just be able to connect with other people like this, even if it's virtual. It really does help. It really does connect us to what's essential and real. And to have these two amazing women to share their work with us is just such a gift. And thank you so much for doing this and being part of this.
Well, thank you, Mara. You're the one who put it all together.
Thanks so
Yeah.
much.
She's
And
pretty
please,
amazing, isn't she?
And I got to tell you, as soon as we can travel, I am coming to Vermont because
oh my God, I just realized that like you don't live here. I was saying to Ruben, like, oh, that's right. She doesn't live here. I've already been thinking of you as a Vermont person.
Ruben is a walking advertisement for y'all. So I am headed your way.
Yeah, you got to bring Ruben with you. He needs to be back here.
I will.
So,
I will.
so I want to mention to this group, because I think it's actually really fitting, and another amazing event that Mara has put together for us, that we will be hosting in 2 weeks, and I think really speaks to some of what we've talked about writing about your obsessions and using the written word as therapeutic and a way to access and better understand your own experience. In 2 weeks, we are going to be doing another event like this with
James
Mara,
Buchanan.
James Buchanan, who is going to talk to us about memoir writing.
He
And
is. Yeah, he's a
yeah, why don't you give a
ghostwriter.
little more, Mara?
Sure. He's a ghostwriter and an author that I've been working with for some time. And he's based in New Hampshire, but we are sort of trying to develop we're thinking about doing like a more publishing at Cove and sort of encouraging people to write about their lives, particularly older people that, have amazing lives and stories to document that we don't want them to be lost to time, lost to the ages. You know, it's great to be able to document your stories. And that's what he does, is he helps people write memoirs. So he is the ghostwriter for countless memoirs. So if that's something that you're interested in doing or learning about, you should definitely register for that Cove Call. It's in 2 weeks. It's 2 weeks from today. And James will be there to talk about how to write your memoir and what a ghostwriter can do for you if you feel like you need to work with one, and answer all of your questions.
Yeah, so that will be very exciting. And then just in the spirit of advertising, of talking about other things that Cove has coming up, 4 weeks from today on Christmas Eve, we will be having a reading of Dylan Thomas's A Child's Christmas in Wales. And so we would love to have you join us for that as well.
Yeah, if you're going to be kind of without family, or, you know, looking for something to do over the holidays, where it's a nice thing that we're doing so that we can all kind of reconnect and have something to do together right before Christmas.
So I guess we'll wrap it up. We're at 3 o'clock. Thank you so much, Rose and Samantha, for joining us today. It was incredibly wonderful. I love the jazz hands. I know Zoom is tricky, but and thank you everyone in the audience for being here and taking the time to listen and think and live with poetry for an hour today. And we certainly would love to see you back. And I wish everyone a very happy Thanksgiving, whatever that looks like for you.
Happy
Thank
Thanksgiving.
you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very safe holiday, everyone.
Yes, you too.
Be safe, be well. Love you guys. Thank you.
Thank
Bye.